Good evening. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I invite you to join us. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Gehrig?
Here.
Pepcorn? Here. Preston? Here. Strand?
Here.
Mahoney?
Here. October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Each year, more than 250,000 women in the United States are diagnosed with breast cancer, and more than 42,000 will die. Regular breast cancer screenings are the best method available to detect breast cancer early when it is most treatable. The Women's Way program of the Fargo Cass Public Health provides free breast cancer screenings for women age 40 to 64 and who become income eligible guidelines. Contact Fargo Cass Public Health at 701-298-6918 for details. Library. Due to the recent rise in COVID-19 cases, all 3 Fargo Public Library locations will operate with new hours until further notice. All library locations will close at 5 on Wednesdays and Thursdays, and downtown main library and the Dr. James Carson library branches will be closed on Sunday till further notice. As per Orange operations for city facilities, members of the public will be required to wear masks within the Fargo public health locations at all times. Children age 4 and younger will not be required to wear masks in the library. The downtown main library has a mask tree in the lobby. Library staff are accepting new handmade masks of any size for the tree to provide masks to the members of the community. Donated masks can be dropped off at the main library circulation desk. And effective today, I activated Orange operations for city facilities, which acknowledges that the new high-risk level of COVID-19 in Cass County. This adheres to the North Dakota Smart Restart guidance provided by the state of North Dakota and the North Dakota Department of Health. The plan will remain in effect till further notice. Some modifications to operations include members of the public will be required to wear masks within all city facilities at all times, and city staff will continue to utilize masks are required in employment policies. Capacity for the chambers is reduced to 46 in order to ensure a 6-foot physical distancing for visitors and staff. This is less than the 1/4 of the chamber's capacity. Due to this restriction, the resident comment period of City Commission meetings is suspended until further notice to avoid large gatherings. Residents are encouraged to contact commissioners via city website. If we could regulate how many people could in here, we could do the comments easier, and as we see tonight, we could easily do comments because there's not a lot of people here. But if we had the open comment period, we might have a lot more people. Is there a motion to approve the order of agenda?
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the October 5th, 2020 regular meeting?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any corrections? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda items 1 through 36? Is there a motion?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Gehrig?
Yes.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Preston? Aye. Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. First item on the agenda is the Red River Valley COVID-19 Task Force update. Commissioner Strand had asked a little bit idea who's on the COVID-19 Task Force as well. Desi Fleming to explain.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I thought I'd start a little bit with just a COVID general update, and then I'll end with the task force update. As you're aware, Cass County was moved to the orange high-risk designation effective October 16th. Since early fall, our numbers have continued to steadily increase. The current assessment for Cass County is based on 3 metrics. According to the North Dakota Department of Health numbers that were updated this morning, the active cases metric is at 48.11 per 10,000 residents, which falls within the red or critical risk category. The testing metrics is at 76.7 per 10,000 residents and remains in the blue new normal category. This is due to the allotted testing in Cass County, which typically averages around 20% of the state's daily total. Testing is based on the testing matrix that was developed by the Red River Valley Task Force. The Cass County rolling average for positivity rate has been rising. We're now at 10.4, 14-day rolling average, which puts us in the orange high risk category. This is all public facing as well, so you can find those on the state website. The next slide will show the positivity rate in Cass County and the state from September 1 till now. Cass County has again surpassed the state for rolling average positivity rate. The trend is very concerning and certainly not what we were hoping to see. As the numbers increase significantly within our state, deaths have as well. We have already set a record high for deaths this month in North Dakota, and we are still adding to that total for October. In Cass County, we have not seen the amount of deaths compared to the rest of the state, but if numbers continue to rise, we will definitely see more spillover into our vulnerable populations. I don't know how to stress the seriousness of this situation. Many are becoming numb to statistics. We have to start adding the human factor back into the numbers. Local public health has heard from the North Dakota Medical Association Physicians Group how staffing in hospitals are stretched, very thin, and they are concerned about this. Several hospitals in the state are on divert, which is causing many citizens to be transferred away from their home areas. I recognize that COVID is not the sole reason for the capacity. It's high census due to a variety of health needs, but anything at this point that increases the chance of hospitalization, whether that be influenza or COVID or any other health issues, is going to add more strain to that system. Contact tracing is becoming overwhelmed this past week with high numbers of daily cases. Most days start with 100 to 200 cases in queue, and we're having to turn some cases over to the state team for assistance. We continue to hire contact tracing, but with cases increasing rapidly, it's really hard to play catch up. Approximately 40% of the cases in Cass County are now community spread, so they are difficult to track. But the contact tracing continues to help identify small clusters of cases and helps support isolation and quarantine practices. So this activity is still important in providing value. With widespread cases, testing, contact tracing, isolation and quarantine, plus prevention measures of hand washing, social distancing, avoiding crowds, and wearing masks are what we need right now. Each tool offers a line of defense, and when used individually may not be fully effective, but when used together, form added layers of prevention to better protect all of us. These are the only tools we have right now until a viable vaccine is available and given to enough people to start increasing our immunity numbers in the public. Commissioner Strand had requested an update on the Red River Valley COVID Task Force. I just wanted to give a little bit of information on that as far as the role and activities to date. This slide represents the partner organizations that are involved with our task force. Mayor Mahoney and I serve as co-chairs of this task force, which meets weekly. The group was formed at the request of the governor, with our main role being to develop strategies to decrease the spread of COVID-19 in the metro area. The task force has no authority to create policy or mandates, but serves to provide guidance and recommendations. The chief operating officer from the governor's office is a member on our task force and serves as a liaison to the state for any challenges or concerns that we might be having locally. Strategy efforts in the metro area have been in three main areas, which are development of a targeted testing matrix, support for case investigation and contact tracing efforts, and isolation and quarantine resources. Funding for these efforts has been provided by the state through the CARES Act. This funding is set to end on December 30th with no identified plan for renewal at this time.
Any questions about the task force, Commissioner Strand?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Desi. Just so you know, the reason for bringing this discussion forward isn't in a critical sense at all. I'm not looking to be critical of your work and your department's work and your team's work. I just have this sense that not a lot of folks out there understand the task force and who's on it, how they got there, what their authorities are, what they've done or not done, what they may do going forward. And I don't know that it's public. I don't know the agendas are public or the meetings are public, so we're kind of at a loss. So it's good to have a sense of who it is. But my biggest questions probably are this. What authority does our task force have at the local level?
Well, it's really, I mean, we've had some latitude with developing our testing, like saying where our testing resources are going. So that's very early on. That was probably one of the biggest things we did, was to identify priority groups for testing. And so, you know, we're only allocated a certain amount of tests in Cass County, and so we needed to be really conscious of where those were going so that we knew that it would target the groups that we wanted to. And I think we've been fairly successful at that. You know, we've had less impacts in long-term care. We've had a lot, but certainly less than across the state, and I think that speaks to our strong testing of long-term care residents and staff.
And if I might just continue and then I'll conclude, is it safe to assume that our local task force is in sync with the state in our action plan? Is the state's plan essentially our plan?
Plan for
action?
Action. I think we probably have a little stronger sense for, you know, mask wearing here than we do in the western part of the state. That's probably one of the significant differences, I think.
And the last thing I'll say is, and you've heard me say this before, take care of each other, keep your batteries charged, watch out for the folks in the trenches. We're in for a long, long haul, and it's already been long, and it's got to be stressful. So watch out for the people you lead and in your department, Desi, so that you, and yourself, so because it's absolutely critical. I'll say this tongue in cheek, I'm glad you have not resigned as our health director, because at the state level, they're having constant turnover, and we can't afford to lose people at the helm. So we support you. We need to know what your needs are. And lastly, just watch out for you and your people.
Appreciate that.
With that, Commissioner Stan, can we give a round of applause for the people in public health that are working so hard?
Absolutely.
So as co-chair of the COVID-19 Emergency Task Force, this last 2 weeks has been unprecedented. And because of that, I went back to Eric Johnson and said, is there something else we can do? On March 16, 2020, a declaration was issued to denote the state of emergency in the city of Fargo as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, which has since been approved and extended by the Fargo City Commission. On July 27, 2020, the Fargo City Commission approved a motion directing the public to wear a mask where and when appropriate, and encouraging stores and businesses to adopt policies prohibiting entry without wearing a mask. The City of Fargo appreciates the sacrifice that individuals, businesses, including employees and other workers, are making in order to stem the tide of COVID-19 cases. However, the number of the COVID-19 cases and deaths resulting continue to rise in the world, the nation, and the state, including the City of Fargo. Each one of us, each resident, each adult, each child, each family, each business, and each store must do more. As I review the trends that we've seen over the last 2 weeks, number one, we're having increased hospitalizations to the point which there's 2 ICU beds open today that could be utilized. But here's the real problem is people are delaying their care. We're seeing with people with delayed cancers, we're seeing people with delayed coronary disease, we're seeing people staying out of the hospitals that truly need the care. And if we don't be careful, we'll overwhelm our hospitals, which was one of the premises when we started this, is we were not to overwhelm our hospitals. We have over 153 people in the hospitals today because of COVID. Increased death rate. What we saw when we initially started this, that we felt if the COVID ran its course, there would be 600 deaths in the state of North Dakota. We're up to 408, and we're going to hit that 600 if we don't start to intervene. Number 3, the risk level escalation went from moderate yellow to high orange. That's a place the state puts us on and changes a variety of different things. Amount of people in a room, 50. 25% of your occupancy in other places. Changes what the businesses can do in a restaurant at 25%. The high level of community spread within Cass County, when you look at all the levels and times that we look at this, high rate of spread in 20 to 29, and we're seeing increased community spread. Remember, it used to be travel or somebody came out or close contact. Now we're finding that it's people within our community. Contact tracing. As much as Desi works and goes hard at it, we keep adding more and more people to contact tracing, and we're 300 people behind this morning starting. And you have to contact 20 people that might have been with us 300 people. And if you can't keep up with contact tracing, you can't isolate people and get them out of the community spreading it again. So we need all those people that do our contact tracing. Board of Health met last Friday and they made the recommendation that we have a mask mandate in the city of Fargo. It is their feeling that it would be helpful to help plateau the disease, which right now we're at a climbing rate. I asked the pediatricians who contacted me and said, here's what we're thinking, is we really would like a mask mandate. We had 65 pediatricians from across the state signing on this. I attended the North Dakota American Medical Association meeting last night, and everybody kept asking, when are we going to do a mask mandate? That will help to bring this virus better. In the forum this weekend, we saw business requests for a mandate from local leaders and concerns for repercussions of the escalation to a red level. If you go to a red level, you shut down bars and restaurants, you shut down your businesses. We've been struggling economically, and the city of Fargo has been doing well, but yet there's still a real fear of what's going to happen this fall when the flu comes back into it. Also, we have seen an increasing negative impact City of Fargo's workforce. We passed these rules on orange, phase orange for the City of Fargo, and we're finding that our numbers are going up in our workforce. We have 1,000 people that work for the City of Fargo, and more we're getting people that either have the COVID or getting the COVID virus or close contact. And lastly, Governor Burgum's recommendation is for local control as necessary. So when it's as necessary, that means the locals have control of what happens. And Commissioner Strand, to your question, yes, we oftentimes follow state policies, but we also can do what we think is best for our community. Therefore, the mayor can do, under emergency powers, endorse a mayor mask mandate. As a community, we must all do our part to greatly reduce the spread of this deadly COVID-19 disease, and therefore I am issuing this mandate to every person, family, business, and store in the city to adopt appropriate measures accordingly. The COVID-19 face covering shall require every person shall within the city of Fargo wear a face covering over the mouth and nose at all indoor environments where they are exposed to non-household members and where social distancing of 6 feet or more cannot be assured, and in all outdoor settings where there is exposure to non-household members unless there exists ample space of 6 feet or more to practice social distancing. Although these measures are being mandated with the strongest possible recommendation, there is no penalty for non-compliance to this mandate. The mandate shall take effect immediately and shall remain in effect until the underlying state of emergency has ended, unless it is sooner modified, terminated by the mayor, or unless it's modified or terminated sooner by a motion resolution approved by the Fargo Board of City Commissioners. This is about science. It's not politics. This is about our community health. I ask the commissioners if they want to make any comments at this time. They can.
Mr. Chairman, if I could make a couple of comments.
Commissioner Preston.
First of all, I'd like the letter from the Board of Health in the public record, so I'll forward that to Diana so that we get that in the record. I certainly support this move, and I'm thinking we probably are at the point where we need to put some enforcement tied with it. However, this is a great step forward. The other side of all of this, and as mayor as well as co-chair of the task force, I would hope that you will use your bully pulpit to its full extent to correct disinformation and encourage the community to buckle down and wear masks. People are looking to you and us for leadership. You indicated I think in your comments, or someone did, that a large majority of this community supports what you're offering tonight, but it can't end there. I'm getting reports about bars on the southern end of downtown that are overcrowded, no masks, and no social distancing. And I know that we're seeing the numbers coming from gatherings, so that's probably an area that we need to make some personal kind of requests to those particular businesses to try to fall in line. I am disappointed, however, with some on this commission who are perpetuating non-factual beliefs about how this virus passes and how it can be slowed down. This is a rhetorical question, but Commissioner Pipcorn, at the last meeting, you informed residents in the crowd that they will be removed if they don't follow the rules of our meetings. I would ask both you and Commissioner Gehrig, who both came in without masks tonight, should that also be the case if you're not following city policy for wearing a mask in city buildings? I watched the police officers who are kind enough to try to regulate individuals that were coming in without masks. I hate to say this, but you're not making it easier for them. Finally, I'd like to say this to everyone who's listening. We are better than this. If we pitch in together, just as we've done with multiple times with flooding, we will come out of this as a better community. I know we're all tired, but this is going to go on for a while, and we cannot see each other as expendable. So wear a mask, socially distance, avoid large gatherings, wash your hands, stay at home if you have symptoms. If we don't slow this down, and Mayor, you referred to this, we may very well go into an economic shutdown. People will quit going to restaurants and stores, they'll quit traveling and using hotels, they will be fearful of going to work. They will button down to safeguard themselves and their families. We have to avoid that if we can. And our healthcare workers will not be available to care for us as we need them. If for no other reason, do this to spare them. So please be smart. That's what I have to say.
Anybody else? Commissioner Strand?
Thank you, Mayor, and our Commissioner Preston. And here, I'll start off by saying better late than never. It's a start for the moment present. We can always restart and reset and get going forward from the moment present. The moment present demands action and leadership. So thank you, Mayor, for stepping up to that. I know the pressure has been immense. And I know you've weighed very, very carefully and balanced your medical knowledge with the people of the community's desires and their concerns. But in the end, you've stepped up, and I appreciate that, and I really stand behind you 100% in going forward as a community where we all get together on moving forward for each other's benefit and safety. So I'll leave it with just one question. In case, we started months ago with a directive and good intentions, and yet we're not always there. So I'll plant this seed with fellow commissioners and the mayor. We need to, if this doesn't satisfy the need in the community, we have to be prepared to put enforcement in. But I'm okay with it right now. This is where it all began, and it's a great moment to start. So I applaud you for yielding to your greater angels, your better angels, and leading us forward in a way that will have a positive impact despite the pushback that we all know is there. And I stand entirely with you. So thank you.
It's going to be a difficult couple of weeks, John, and thank you, commissioners, because we got to get this thing to go the other direction. Item 38, receive and file ordinance relating to Human Relations Commission. Either Eric or Nancy is supposed to speak to this? Or Nicole Crutchfield?
Nicole.
Dan, I thought they were going to have attorneys here, but we'll have Nicole.
Well, we'll have the attorneys as backup. But yeah, so just in front of you is a request that came to us this summer. The Human Relations Commission processed this request, and with their outreach to the community, recognized they needed more representation on their board, and so they would like to change their board membership from 9 to 11. And so in front of you is just the ordinance in front of you tonight as a first, just a file. I think it's just a receive and file tonight.
Yeah, receive and file, correct.
So the rationalization is that you want to add more people to the commission to get more people's input, or what is it?
Yes, to get more diversity and representation and more input.
Any comments or questions of Nicole?
I make the recommended motion.
I'll second it.
Second it.
And if I could make a tangential comment,
Commissioner Preston.
Certainly appreciate the work that the planning, or that the health department has done, but we also need to recognize the planning department staff. They've been putting in a lot of time into this COVID issue. Tendentially, yes.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Strand?
Yes.
Preston?
Yes.
Garrick?
Yes.
Pepcorn?
No.
Mahoney?
Aye. Item 39A, it's a continuance from 11-2, a petition filed for exclusion property located at 5218 68th Street South. Do I have a motion to continue?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Preston?
Aye.
Garrick?
Yes.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. Next, annexation of property located at 7269 25th Street South on the north half of the southeast quarter, section 11, township 138 north, range 49 west of the 5th principal meridian, Cass County, North Dakota. First reading of annexation ordinance. Donald Kress to explain.
Good evening, Commissioners. Donald Kress of the Department of Planning and Development. Can you hear me okay here? As the mayor has indicated with the legal description, this property is located in far south Fargo, 25th Street South here, 73rd Avenue South here. Davies High School is a landmark right here below Madeline's Meadows. Here's a couple of photographs of that project site this morning, an undeveloped area. The current zoning is agricultural. The annexation will not change any of the zoning. Here is a plat of the annexation. The applicant, John Eunice of Sitka Investments, actually could not be here with us tonight. But we have received no public comment on this project. The Planning Commission's recommendation is stated in your staff report and shown on the screen. That concludes staff's presentation. Thank you, Commissioners.
Is there anyone present who wishes to speak regarding to this annexation? Is there anyone who wishes to speak? If not, we'll close the public hearing. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I just have one question real quick. Donald, if you go back a couple of slides, right there is good. The area that is, how long has the development been in place that's right north of this lot?
Madeline's Meadows, yes.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, it's called Madeline's Meadows. So your commission will remember you did a part of this last time on the October 5th meeting. That's actually been there for a couple of years.
Okay.
It's done in pieces.
So the leapfrog that happened from 64th Avenue South and further south, how long are there plans for that to get filled in?
Okay, this is actually a slightly incorrect map here. May I only go back to one here? So yeah, our GIS was not current here. This has all been platted. This is Golden Valley 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. And then this is an existing plat here from the 60s, and then this will. So this is, except for one block here, this will be continuously platted all the way down here. All right. And this would be contiguous, ma'am. So it'll be. It's access from 25th. It's contiguous with the existing Madeline's Meadows. That's part of our review to make sure that continuity exists, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Commissioner Strand.
Thank you. Donald, I'm just curious if you could, as I understand it, in that area on the west side of 25th Street South, that and south of 73rd Avenue South, that's extraterritorial land to Fargo now?
Yes, sir, that is correct. And once you annex it, then it's in the city.
And at this moment in time, we don't have flood protection in place there, do we?
You know, Commissioner, I'm going to ask if our city engineer could defer that one to her. I stick with what I know.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. We are currently in the process of deepening and widening the drain and putting levees in along there. And then as part of their development, they do construct a levee on the south side, a temporary levee that will be relocated.
And if I might continue, if and when the diversion is finalized as a project and in place, then this protection would be in place, the flood protection for that whole area?
Correct. So when the diversion would be in place, that would no longer be in the floodplain.
Okay, thank you.
And they still have a requirement to take it out of the floodplain today. That levee on the south side is just for overland water coming from the south.
That's the levee there.
They still have to build the flood elevation, so if they build another location, they have to build to 41 feet.
Correct.
Because
They still have to meet all the
Lomar and their
floodplain.
lot and everything, John, so they can still build theoretically in those areas just like any place south.
So thank you. And just so you all know why I'm voting no on this, I'll be happy to reconsider my vote when we've got assured flood protection in place. But I'm hesitant to support expansion of our city's boundaries until that point in time.
Any other discussion? Roll call vote?
Preston?
Aye.
Garrick?
Yes.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Strand?
No.
Mahoney?
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Item C, special assessment list for the Business Improvement District fees, continued from the 2/10/5 regular meeting. Steve Sprague to explain.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. So this evening, what we have in front of you is a one-year extension of the Downtown Business Improvement District. The Business Improvement District was first established in 2012, and the first one was a 5-year, and then we did a 3-year extension, and so it's expiring now in 2020. The bid is set up to provide services to the downtown businesses that normal city operations would not provide. And I know the bid is here and wants to tell you a little bit about some of the successes that they've had over the last few years.
Well, good evening, Mayor Mahoney and Commissioners. I'm Jesse Helen, and I represent the Downtown Community Partnership as a board member and also a co-chair for the bid advisory. So I wanted to give a little bit of information and background on the bid, as well as our work with Steve and his staff in formulating our plan for 2021 and moving forward. So what is a bid? Bid allows property owners to use city assessment powers to fund services above and beyond city services, and currently engaging with our current business improvement district. As Steve mentioned, it was started in 2012. We have a current agreement in place that started in 2017, and I'll go through some financial information here in a second, but that has not been updated since 2017, and we all know the dynamics and how things have shifted in downtown since that time, and what we're looking for a renewal for 21. Just an update for the bid. Chris Schlepp is here with me as well. He's operations manager, and he has got staff members, ambassadors that are his employees that are responsible for all of the maintenance and beautification of downtown that happen behind the scenes and happen all throughout the year. So the current zones that the bid works in, the gold zone 1 is basically the Broadway corridor, Broadway and off-Broadway areas. Zone 2 is right around those. 3, 4, and 5 are really the zones that are kind of on the periphery of the Broadway corridor, but certainly a part of downtown, stretching from University to 2nd, and then from 1st Avenue up to 9th Avenue North. Those zones, although we considered sort of reshaping them to bring them more up to date with the current growth of downtown, we decided, given current conditions right now and in what we're facing downtown, that we're proposing to keep them the same for this year. And as we're looking at approval of a 1-year extension, looking at potentially making some changes to those for next year's renewal. So the services that the bid provides: clean, litter control, sticker and graffiti, which we all know was a big part of their work for this year. Maintenance, trash, planter beds, directories and other receptacles, safety and hospitality, snow removal at Broadway and the railroad crossings, as well as providing safety escorts as needed by businesses and residents downtown, and ordinance enforcement, and really the collaboration between the bid, the work that Chris and his staff do from a security standpoint, and also the collaboration with the police force has been tremendous, as well as other agencies that help some of the folks that Chris is working with. And then beautification, the winter lights, seasonal flags, flower baskets, the parklets, the alfresco islands, all those other amenities that are provided and maintained by the bid. So just taking a look at financials and what we're proposing, the current assessment is approximately $350,000, and like I mentioned, that was approved on a 3-year renewal. It has not changed since 2017. We worked with Steve and his staff to capture what has come online since 2017. That's the next number that you see, and we'll continue to work on what that looks like in the years to come with all the new projects and new services that are coming online in the future. So here's a couple shots of Chris and his staff and what they accomplished. A lot of things that we take for granted that are happening on a daily basis all throughout downtown with trash and removal, cleaning, certainly snow removal, which we're coming into right now and is a big part of Chris's work. And then, you know, I think at the beginning of each day for Chris, starting on Broadway and going out, about 2 hours time every day is dedicated towards trash removal and taking care of those amenities that are downtown that help us to have a prosperous downtown. I just wanted to thank Chris again and his staff, his ambassadors, for the work that's being done in the city of Fargo. All the departments that we have the opportunity to collaborate with. It's been tremendous in working with Steve and in his office and planning for what that next term looks like in all the opportunities that we have. I'll say that the difference in assessment and where we're at from 17 until now really is a culmination of a number of great opportunities to serve new ventures downtown and the balance of a lot of the services that the bid is being asked to be pulled into right now. So be happy between myself and Chris to answer any questions.
Any questions of any commissioners? Commissioner Gary.
Is the assessment voluntary?
Well, they can't opt out on an individual basis. So it's the whole downtown is in or out, right? They have a low bar to protest out. The bar is only 30%, where typically, like if we were doing alley paving, you'd be looking at a 50%. But we received no people that said that they did not want to. So I think the question maybe that you're asking is this something that the downtown is willing to pay for? And it appears that it is.
Mr. Chair, can I just add something real quick? Just can you talk a little bit about, so you've met with a lot of the people that are paying, and so if you could just, because they've met with the property owners, so can you talk a little bit about that?
We have. We've met with a number of property owners, and really we received zero negative feedback from the services that the bid provides, the timeliness of snow removal, and to be honest, it's an assessment that these folks are receiving, and we're receiving more requests to do more. So we're looking to balance that, but through our effort to reach out on a one-on-one basis with a lot of the property owners downtown, we did not receive any negative feedback.
Just one more before. The one thing I am concerned about, this is going to grow and grow, and I do think our finance committee and Steve, we need to monitor it, because even though they're doing a great job, it's going to get to be a considerable amount of money, and we just want to make sure. I have confidence. I'm the liaison. I have confidence in them, but just to the point of it's an assessment still, and it goes through the city, so we need to make sure we monitor to make sure it's being spent wisely.
And the other thing, Steve, is the city spends a fair amount of money on snow removal with Ben's crew as well. So it does cost more than the bid specials to get rid of the snow. So, Mr. Preston.
Yeah, since I'm new to this, can you explain to me, Steve, is the update to the plan, which I understand is a year-long plan this time around, is that one and the same as approving the special assessment district, or do you present the special assessment district every year to be approved?
No, so when the bid was first created, it was a 5-year assessment,
okay.
and then we looked at that. So what happens is that the values of the property get captured at the time that the bid is created, and so the assessment it then gets locked in for that period. And so after the first 5 years, we did a 3-year renewal, and now primarily because of the economic uncertainty in the downtown. And being aware of that, the bid has come to the city requesting a 1-year renewal, just like an extension.
Okay, but it's locked into what the property values were 3 years ago?
No, now because we're doing the renewal,
updated.
It's locked in at the values as of May of 2020. That's when the assessors set their valuation for the coming year.
Okay. I would also kind of echo what Commissioner Pepcorn was saying. I'm assuming you'll come back sometime after January with an annual report and financial statements, which would be then reviewed by staff as well as at the commission level. Is that correct?
Well, as staff, we meet monthly with the bid advisory committee, and we review the financial statements and look at the expenditures and kind of make sure that everything is tracking where we anticipate. Certainly we can come back with a year-end statement or summary of what the year has been like for the bid.
I have to say, as a resident, we benefit tremendously from what is being done, so it's wonderful. But it is a contract out to actually provide this service. So it's good to hear that there's monthly meetings, but I would certainly like to see financial statements at year end too.
Sure, we can do that. One thing too, I thought Commissioner Pepcorn was going down this path, but the city also contributes to the bid with a memorandum of understanding with the members of the bid, and in which we provide some in-kind services, and then there are some services that are outside the scope of the business improvement district that the city just pays them to take care of. For instance, the snow removal at the railroad crossings. That's something the bid does, but the city it comes out of Ben's budget. The city pays for it through that memorandum of understanding. So if you looked on there was about a $530,000 income into the bid with the offset expense, and 487 is what the assessment part is, and that difference is through that memorandum.
Commissioner Pipcorn.
So, Mr. Chair, just a couple more things. I do think that Ben looks at this as an asset too, that they work together, and I do think that people's standard for Broadway, for snow removal especially, is going to rise where we can't, and to me they're complementary, and I think we're going to have to be moving snow off there immediately so the pedestrian traffic is not inhibited, because that's the way it's been in the past. So I think Ben, and I think as a city, it's a tremendous asset. And my prediction is there's going to be, like Robert Street, I think there's going to be additional areas that want to get into this because it raises the level of how the street looks. And so I think, but in the meantime, I do think we need to be very careful that we monitor how the money is spent, because it's going to grow and grow. And I just think that's something you have to be careful of. We have excellent staff, we have excellent people on the board, but at the end of the day, it's tax money, and so we need to be careful. So thank you very much.
Is there anybody else from the public wishes to comment on this bid special? Is there somebody from the public wishes to speak? If not, we'll close the public hearing. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
Any other comments? Commissioner Strand.
Thank you, Mayor. Oh, thank you, Mayor. I just want to note for the commission's sake that I don't expect it's an issue, but I am a business. The building I co-own is in this list, so if anybody's concerned about my voting on it, let me know.
Mr. Chair, in the risk of full disclosure, I also have a property in the bid area, and so if you don't want me to vote on it, I guess I don't know.
I think the difficulty with it is not getting a benefit. You're actually paying, aren't you, John?
Yeah.
And so
It's not a benefit.
So since you're paying,
All special assessments are a benefit. Don't say it's not, because it's illegal then.
If Commissioner Strand wants to pay my that, I would appreciate that.
No, I think all three, you should recuse yourself, and then Tim and I will vote.
Eric, any comment on that? May they vote on it even though they're paying specials?
Yeah, I don't think it's a direct or substantial personal or pecuniary interest, so I don't think it's a conflict in my opinion.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Preston?
Aye.
Garrick?
Yes.
Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. Recommendation of the Finance Committee on Improvement District BN 198. Brenda Derrick and Dan Eberhardt to explain.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. After the last meeting, BN 19A Special Assessment District was tabled and asked Finance to take a look at it. Dan Eberhardt and myself provided some background information on how we got to where we were. And then what we also included is just some concepts of, even though it's a regular shaped lot, what some of those irregular areas allow to help enhance the development of that lot. And so in your packet, you'll find the background information, like I said, of how we got here, along with a pictorial view of some of the things that those irregular areas can be used for, such as their water retention requirements. And so it was still our recommendation to concur with the findings of the Special Assessment Commission and recommend that no reduction. And then we also talked about the deferral and just reiterated, typically when we look at deferrals, what some of those requirements are within our deferral policy, which one of those is that it's not platted and it's not developable. So I got Dan here too.
Any questions of the commissioners? May I have a motion?
I so move.
I'll second.
Second. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Garrick?
Yes.
Preston?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. 41, recommendation to extend the resolution extending the moratorium pertaining to the retail sale of alcoholic beverages to January 11th, 2021. Steve Sprague to explain.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. I guess I'm like a bad dream. I keep coming back here. I did receive an email from at least one concerned business downtown where they're getting requests to develop, because it appears there aren't going to be Christmas parties and that type of thing. And so they wanted to extend this at least to get through the holiday season. And so I reached out to Commissioner Pepcorn, and he was open to this suggestion, and so it's before you for your consideration.
Do I have a motion?
I so move.
Second. Or a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I'd just like to reiterate that I think we should extend this indefinitely. I've said that at last meetings and in the past, and it adds stability to those folks who are getting a little bit of income so they can plan a little bit further ahead. And I think it is helpful. No one has complained about this thing. The only complaints that may arrive are people who have off sale and think it might tip into their bottom line, which I don't see a correlation there. I don't see people ordering, a case of beer. They order beer for their meal or whatever, or a drink for their meal, and then they move on. So this is a good thing. I think Fargo has had time to look at this, and it's been proven to be successful. And I would like to see it seriously considered to just be an indefinite thing until such times we want to close it.
Commissioner Strand.
So Commissioner Garrick, if you make that a motion, I'll second it.
There was already a motion made.
No, you can amend it.
That's true. I'll amend it to read until instead of saying until January 11th, 2021, say indefinitely.
Second.
Comments on the amendment?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I guess the main comment will be all the people that paid for those very expensive licenses basically aren't going to be happy with that, and so we have to be prepared to compensate them for either buy their licenses back, as basically you're making them worthless. And so to me, you have to have a financial plan. The other thing I want to add is when the governor says you can only have 25% of your business open, you're going to kill those businesses. you're killing them right now. And so to say that's going to go on and on, they're not going to survive. And so something has to be done. And I don't know what the plan is, but if we said to the state government, you're only going to be able to operate on 25% of your revenues, how long do you think that would continue? Not very long, is what I would guess. And so it seems very easy for the governor to say, you just need to operate on 25%. Good luck with that. However, the state, we get to continue with all the revenue that we can possibly consume. And so to me, there's an issue going on here. It seems like we're very concerned about safety, but we're not very concerned about these small businesses because they're gonna go out of business. We couldn't survive on 25%. How long could you? All right, thank you.
Commissioner Gary.
And that's my concern, Dave, is a lot of these businesses are small businesses that they're getting along just barely, and a lot of them aren't even opening anymore because they can't have enough people come in. But if they can deliver to people, you know, with Grubhub or whatever, you know, Uber food or whatever they do, and they can also make extra money with the beverages because that's where a lot of the real revenue comes. You know, the income from food is very tiny. With a drink, it's a lot more. So if we can give some assurance to these small businesses in the long term, and say, look, we're going to do this for a while. It's going to be on the books for a long time until we'll give you a 2-month notice when we want to end it. But until that time, keep doing what you're doing, expand it if you can. And I really, you know, off sale and things like that. That business is actually booming right now. So it's not that I don't feel bad for them. It's just the circumstances. But I'm not concerned with the off sale people because they're doing very, very well, whereas restaurants and small bars and things like that are not doing as well. And this gives them some additional revenue that has had zero problems with it. No complaints, no police actions, nothing like that. And it's worked very, very well.
Mr. Chair, can I add one more thing? But the thing that concerns me, Commissioner Gehrig, is you say indefinitely. That the people that own those other licenses, you know this already. They're not going to be happy. They're going to be like, what are you doing to my license? So that's my concern.
I don't disagree with you.
Commissioner Preston.
I don't have any problem with extending it in time spans like we have been. I do have a problem with doing it indefinitely, mainly because we have not talked through the impact of that, whether it be to off-sale licenses or any other impact. So this is not an inconvenience to extend this every 3 months. So I don't understand the urgency for doing it indefinitely.
Commissioner Gehrig.
And to answer that question is you have businesses that are investing in ways of packaging alcohol. You have to buy the bottles or the bags or the straws or the way to get that alcohol to somebody legally. So some of these businesses are saying, well, I can get you a margarita, but I've got to buy bags to get you that margarita because I can't put it into a can. So these people are actually investing in this new venture. So if we say to them, hey, it's good for another 2 months, they're going to say, well, maybe I'll buy 100 bags and not 1,000 bags, and those 100 bags will cost more per unit. If they can say, okay, this is going to go on for 6 months, I'm going to estimate this many bags, they can get a better deal on that, make more profit for themselves.
Mr. Chairman, if I could suggest, if we refer this particular issue back to the Liquor Control Board so it gets a public airing, I think that would be better.
I would remind the commissioners to please allow me to recognize you. We're getting a little talk over here. I don't mind, Commissioner Strand.
Thank you, and I appreciate the dialogue. I guess where I'm at is this, is I don't know that we're going to be done talking COVID or pandemic for who knows how long, you know, and my suggestion would be that when we start lifting emergency declarations, when we start lifting mandates on people with masks, that the Liquor Control Board bring this up immediately at their agenda to revisit, if that's the time, then to consider a curtailing of this extension. But you know, I don't see a problem with continuing going forward, and my guess is let's hope it's sooner that we can discontinue it, but I don't see that coming.
Commissioner Preston.
I waited. Sorry about that. Then I would say tie it to the emergency declaration. I don't like indefinitely without having some kind of public airing.
Commissioner Gehrig.
At this point, I think we have to. At this point, this is an emergency type thing, right? This isn't something we can do without changing state law. Eric?
City ordinance, I was going to offer the same comment that I assume that this is in alignment with the state of emergency, which is sort of indefinitely might not be quite the word, but I think it extends until the emergency is completed as determined by the city commission.
That was kind of what I was getting at.
Then I think you would need, oh, I'm sorry.
Would you like to modify your amendment?
Eric, give me the language.
Certainly, yeah, you could extend it instead of the deadline of January 11th, that it would terminate at the same time as the underlying state of emergency that was, I don't have the date at the top of my head, but the current state of emergency generally for COVID matters.
That's what I'd like it to read.
Mr. Strand, will you agree with that?
Yes.
I do. Commissioner Preston, I think you wanted to say one more thing.
That's exactly what I wanted to hear.
Okay, are we all ready then? So the first motion is the motion on extending it until the emergency COVID-19 is declared done, right?
We are voting on the amendment, not the actual.
On the amendment,
right.
Yeah. Roll call vote.
Gehrig?
Yes.
Strand?
Yes.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Preston?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Yes. Now we'll vote on the original motion, which is to extend it, but now it is to when the COVID-19 emergency is over. Roll call vote.
With the new language.
But
yep.
Mr. Chair, can I just ask a question? Isn't it essentially a moot point because we've just extended it to coincide with the end of the, is that right?
What we just voted on was the amended language to the motion. And now that we've agreed on the language, we're going to now vote on what we said.
Thanks for working with me, Commissioner Carey. So I appreciate it.
Thanks, guys, for all advising each other. Roll call vote for the original motion with the new amendment onto it.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Gehrig?
Yes.
Preston?
Yes.
Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Yes. I see everybody's ready for the 76th Avenue corridor study. Do you want to do a 5-minute break before you start? Your presentation is 15 minutes, isn't it? Something like that? Yeah. Let's take a 5-minute break and then we'll give that presentation. Thank you. We'll call the meeting back to order. And now we'll go into the study of the 76 corridor study.
Hello, Mayor, fellow City Commissioners. My name is Michael Maddox. I'm the Senior Transportation Planner for the Fargo-Moorhead Metropolitan Council of Governments. For the last couple of years, Fargo and its partners, the city and Horace, have been looking at the future of the 76th Avenue corridor. As you all know, this corridor is slated to have a fairly significant role in the transportation system in the future, as it will be a continuation of the Mile Line sections, ultimately leading to kind of a major thoroughfare that might have a mix of uses, commercial, office, high-density residential, tapering off into more lower-density residential, and also connecting into Horace, which we all know is growing very rapidly. So we really wanted to get in front of the development pressure in this area and look at what the vision of that roadway would be and what its functionality would be. And so we really looked at what the full build traffic volumes are going to be in the future, what kind of access management there should be, but also tried to take a visionary approach to some of the goals that are listed in GO 2030, the city's comprehensive plan, and trying to forward those goals and those philosophies within this study. So some planning themes that were used throughout the course of the study were to integrate some mixed use opportunities, to make sure that there's a density in some of the commercial areas to promote walkability, to look at a future I-29 interchange, and to kind of look at how the building and the streetscape kind of align to one another. But also looking at other roadways and how they might support the operations of an arterial roadway. So we really looked at two alternatives throughout this study, and those were alternative one, which is a regional arterial. This is something that was put forward through a study that was done by MetroCog in 2017 called the Parking and Access Requirement Study, and that really laid a framework for locally derived functional classification and looking at kind of how we move traffic throughout the region. Right now, there is no such roadway that really manifests as a regional arterial, but it's used in a lot of more major urban areas as kind of a way to promote travel throughout the area, and not just a localized area. And number two was really a commercial arterial, and this is kind of the forwarding of a philosophy that's already being used in the city. Avenues like 52nd, 32nd, maybe 13th. So more of that traditional kind of commercial development. And there's a few differences between these that I really won't get into the minutia, but one of the major differences is prioritizing more the through traffic versus prioritizing more access to commercial uses that are along the corridor. We also looked at a number of different kinds of intersection treatments. If you look at 52nd Avenue south after the reconstruction from 45th over to 63rd, you can see some of these new aged intersection types like R-cuts. And so we're looking at the use of some of those different types of more modern intersection treatments to manage the flow of traffic, but also looking at some of the traditional ways like signalization to manage that flow as well. And the difference between the two is really in alternative one, try to have more non-signal controlled intersections to promote that flow of traffic, whereas in alternative two, the commercial alternative, we really looked at that signalization at intersections to promote the turning movements into adjacent developments. And so there were a preferred access plan that was developed for both of these alternatives. They're fairly similar except for the intersection treatments and then the collector networks. You can see from this alternative, there's a very high density of collector networks that would service the developments between the Mile Line section roads. And so that density of collector is really to move people throughout that area without having to come out onto the arterial, which would increase traffic volumes and increase conflict between cars moving in different directions. Whereas the second alternative, like I said, with the signalized intersections, gives that more direct access. You can see the similarities between the two, really trying to limit the number of access points per mile, just because we know that this will be a highly functional class road. Traffic volumes in the future time frame, which we didn't really assign a year. This is based upon a full build volume, so development that would go all the way from 52nd all the way down to 100th. So it's very far off in the future, but we're looking at traffic volumes in that 45 to 50,000 range near the interstate there, if an interchange would be necessitated there, which with those kind of volumes it would be. And so we're just really looking at alternatives, given that we know that this area is the prime growth area of the city of Fargo. And so we really wanted to get out ahead of what of development and really lay down a vision for that roadway. We did develop a couple of alternatives for development in this area, and basically this is how development reacts to the roadway itself. And so given the amount of access management, looking at kind of where buildings face, how they're oriented, and kind of their intensity as well. Through a building blocks exercise the consultant did at the beginning of the study, the 45th and 76th interchange really looked at a very high degree of density, multi-story buildings, as a major commercial node along this corridor that would transition outward as you get away from that node into more residential areas. So we'll see in a video that I've inserted later in the presentation kind of how the development of the roadway characteristics meet. So this is that video. Let me hit play here. And you can see that this is one of the alternatives here, and just the level of intensity that there could be along this corridor, especially in that 45th area. You can see some of the characteristics with parking lots maybe being behind buildings or on the side of buildings rather in front of the buildings, where the building would have more relationship with the street. This is a philosophy that is put forward with the Go 2030 plan. So knowing that the vision for this future, we use that full build out, we did break this into many phases based upon the need of the roadway. So this year and next year, the county is actually doing a project to pave this roadway as a 2-lane rural cross section to 45th Street, and then from 45th Street to 64th, also paving that as, I believe, County Highway 6 or County Road 6. Where that designation is coming off of 52nd, given the improvements that were just made to it, and then that designation will be placed on 76th to connect to the project, the overpass project that Fargo is currently engaged in. However, we know that at certain ADT levels that would trigger other improvements, and we want to make sure that when we make improvements that we're doing them to best conserve resources and to best facilitate growth and make sure that we're not wasting those investments. And so making sure that we're not building things too far in advance. We know that one major way that we build roadways here is to special assess neighboring properties. However, this is a arterial roadway, so there will likely be a high degree of federal funding if the city would choose to go that route. So we really want to make sure that we're phasing in those improvements as they're needed. And you can just see here that we did that based upon traffic volumes, and then those are the phases. There is an updated phase that was just put in a couple weeks ago, a phasing plan in the study on MetroConk's website that you can check out if you want a little bit more information.
We oftentimes have been asked by the governor to do ROI on the things that we do. Does that interact with us at all? We've had that, you know, you look at 45th and how that commercial has come along on Veterans Boulevard. So do you take into account, you know, what's natural stuff we have seen evolve, or is this going to be a study that tries to be best practice density and then single family homes, center core, or different things like that?
It's a little bit of both. We didn't do a direct return on investment study as part of this plan, but we looked at best practices in our area, in our region, and tried to forward some of the philosophies of both the city's comprehensive plan and MetroCog's Metropolitan Transportation Plan, which looks at right-sizing transportation investments based upon its given area. And so we did look at, you know, what the end cost of those roadway improvements are going to be, especially with the differences between the two alternatives. There are different pedestrian treatments that would be necessary. For instance, in alternative 1, because of that throughput, looking at grade separating, having pedestrian tunnels, which is done in some areas of our community. You know, if you look at Moorhead and their DDI project, or along University, they have grade separated because of the free flow of on and off the interstate there. And so we did look at the cost of those type of improvements and say, you know, you're going to try to have to balance some things here.
Mr. Chairman, if I could ask
Mr.
a question related to that. So if you are talking more dense development in this area and multi-level buildings, at least on the commercial side, has there been any consideration of trying to decrease the traffic flow because people are inside a neighborhood where they can actually get the services and they don't have to travel so much? And was that calculated in?
Yeah, that was one of the core philosophies that was integrated into this plan and into other plans as well. Our MTP, the aforementioned parking and access requirement study, is looking at direct connections from neighborhoods to commercial areas without having to get out onto a major roadway, or just in proximity being able to walk or bike to those destinations, therefore reducing traffic.
So that was considered into your traffic numbers, your traffic volume?
Our model currently, we used our traffic model, and our traffic model doesn't necessarily take into that account right now, but we know that at this time period of not projecting out to the time period that the study goes to, that it's a certain percentage of trips, and so we know that number. But there's kind of a chicken or the egg thing with bicycle and pedestrians, where you know, if you build it, they will come, sort of things, and if you don't build it, they won't come. And that's one of the troubles that we've been having with a lot of the planning that has gone on in some of our corridor studies, is really trying to gauge what the need for bicycle and pedestrian facilities are. MetroCog and I believe the city of Fargo has a complete streets policy, and so we really go by that philosophy and try to integrate those multimodal transportation amenities into a high or a roadway.
One more
corridor.
Question, if I could.
Mr. Preston?
So most of this land around 76 is not in the city of Fargo right now, right?
Correct. It's in the 4 mile UTA area.
Right. So eventually it will be annexed in, probably. So I was at a focus group for the Veterans Boulevard and was really impressed with the participants, and there were participants from the county as well as Horace, in the interest in making things walkable, street design, using traffic calming. I know that street design is further down the road here, but you know, concerned that gets incorporated into the phases as we move forward.
Yeah, and forgive me, I did skip over some of that information just to take time into consideration. Okay. One of the philosophies that we integrated into this study, and that ties with another study that MetroCog is doing currently, which is the Fargo Moorhead Diversion Greenway Plan, is to have a greenway actually along this corridor in one of the alternatives, an alternative one, just because of the intensity of the usage of that roadway and the throughput, looking at having big buffers on either side that can be planted and used as a greenway system to connect up with because the 76th corridor will have a bridge over the diversion. And so looking at that connection, and so that was one of the alternatives that was brought forward, is these very large, almost linear park system that would be along the roadway that would contain a path that people could use, and that would connect to those grade separations that I mentioned earlier, so you could directly access some of the commercial opportunities on the other side of the road.
Okay,
Commissioner Pipcorn.
Yep, Mr. Chair, first of all, Michael, thank you very much for this. This is awesome. Could you show us, so West Fargo is going to build a high school in Horace, and is that on the map? Could you show us where that is? And just and maybe just talk a little bit about, we have to have a road there, and I guess my perspective is I would rather build a really good road the first time, or do we have to build this smaller one first? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So I'll start with the first question here, just to unpack that a little bit. The West Fargo School District is building a middle school and a high school. They just completed the middle school. I believe it's up and running. And then they're going to build a high school here in the preceding year. Where'd the cursor go? There we go. And that's right here. It's 88 acres of property right in this area, right in this quadrant right here. And so that necessitated a project the city of Horace and the county did last year. They did build a 5-lane cross-section in theirs because they believed the turning movement counts were high enough. I guess I won't comment on whether or not MetroCog believes that that was maybe a little aggressive. The city of Horace, though, decided to build that cross-section. But they're actively growing right now, and we know that most of the portion of the Fargo jurisdiction will not be developed recently. And then when it does, we want to make sure that there's a level of density and a level of things that would utilize that transportation infrastructure without having to, build it and then maintain it for a number of years until the traffic levels get up to that volume. And there, I think if you look back in the history of Fargo road building, there's been both approaches. 52nd Avenue was one that you built it first, but there's been other roadways that you've expanded over time. And so I will say this is kind of a marriage of both of those philosophies to try to get at, making that that 20-year investment and make sure that that lasts, that the pavements last for that period of time.
I want to add my editorial comment. So I think prices, interest, all those things are as low now. If we wait to build this, it's going to cost a lot more. Interest will be a lot higher. So this is just my opinion. I think we should build even though I think I got the message, you thought that was maybe a little aggressive, the 5-lane. I think we should build this because what I believe is once the diversion gets completed, this will fill in. We saw those empty spaces. That isn't going to be the case here. This is going to fill in shockingly fast. And then one more comment. I think we're so fortunate that Horace and the city of Fargo and our engineers, so we're fortunate at the city of Fargo, we have an excellent engineering department, but we can work with Horace to make sure we have the theme for that corridor. I think that's why MetroCog fulfills an important position because we all work together. So I thank you very much for what you do. I think it's a great thing. And then one more thing, we just talk about with the census, we are going to change from MetroCog being something funded by the DOT to being our own standalone entity. So I apologize for veering off course, but it's a very big deal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Preston.
If I could just make one more comment and to counter a little bit what Commissioner Pepcorn was saying. I agree fully more with a phased kind of project that you're talking about, because think of all the special assessment deferrals we would have to do for a huge project. So that I would not support. The other question I have, and the ROI that the mayor referred to earlier, would certainly depend on the density of the development that happens along with this corridor. But can you point to me where the retention pond that the governor asked for the ROI is? Right there. Okay. Yeah. So
He actually asked for the whole area, that's where the detention pond is, but you could go across the way as well over by Davies High School and ask the same question. Yeah, the other issue is that on this particular project on 32nd Avenue, we got some federal money that made it very advantageous for us to do that project. I think one of the questions we will ask is, can we get some federal money or state money to do this project as well?
Yeah, I guess as Commissioner Pepcorn mentioned, the funding stream that MetroCog is funded by is federal, our planning dollars, but we also, because we're an MPO and TMA, will receive a direct allocation of STBG, the Surface Transportation Block Grant Program funds, which can go to a whole host of things: bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, roadway infrastructure, basically everything just transportation related. However, that is a finite resource, and some of the, we're looking at some of the roadway costs in this scenario, or in some of the scenarios that we took, and they could be 5 or 6, 7 lane facilities, and of course those tend to be very, very costly, and so we were really looking at what our funding will be in the future, our ability to pay for that infrastructure, and our ability to maintain that infrastructure in the long term as well. We want to make sure. I previously worked in the state of Illinois, where they couldn't maintain their infrastructure given the build-out that they had in the 60s and 70s. And so one of the important things that I bring with me in my approach is make sure that we can maintain that infrastructure for the long term.
Michael, will you go to the last slide again for contact information? I think we all have the study in front of us. The commissioners can review and ask questions afterwards. But just for the public, would you please speak to this last slide?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you have any comments or questions, feel free to contact me. My email and phone number are there, as well as you can visit www.76avstudy.com, and you can find our draft report and some of the conversations and some of the materials that we've developed along the 2-year process that we've been on now. And you could also go to MetroCog's website. They're both on that website and MetroCog's website. So.
Can I have a motion for the recommendation of accepting this study?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Preston?
Aye.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Gehrig?
Yes.
Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. Resolution to support the MAT Bus Transit Authority study.
And again, I'm like a bad penny. You can't get rid of me. This was also a study that I was the project manager on for MetroCog.
Michael, just wanted, Jeremy, did you want to say something? I noticed that you were at this podium, or you're okay? Okay. I'm sorry, Mike. I just wanted to make sure you didn't have something you wanted.
Sure, absolutely. And so one of the things that MetroCog does is work with our transit agency, MatBus, or the City of Fargo Transit and City of Moorhead Transit, to look at some planning efforts. And one of those is the creation of a transit authority in our region. And this main initiative was spurred by, as Dave Pepcorn mentioned, the move to a TMA. MatBus, after we become a TMA, will not be eligible and not have the flexibility of some of the funding sources that it receives currently, which will leave a bit of a gap that it would need to make up with some kind of local funding or state funding. On the Minnesota side, and we'll get into this a little bit further in the presentation, they've pledged to fill in the City of Moorhead's gap with state funds, as they do collect quite a bit of funds for transit initiatives in the state of Minnesota. But we'll just get into the study here, a little bit of the background. I think Commissioner Preston may recognize the 1999 Transit Authority study. I believe I was told that she was involved in that at that time, where it really introduced the idea of creating a transit authority in this region that would support transit, a regional transit approach. And the results of that study basically were the creation of MatBus as it is today, is moving the transit agencies together, the City of Moorhead and the City of Fargo, the creation of the Metropolitan Transit Garage, and a number of cost sharing and other memorandums of understanding that were signed at that time to bring transit service under that singular moniker. We know that in the last 5 to 10 years, the system has been growing pretty exponentially, especially with the addition of the student ridership in our area, which comprises about 50% of the transit ridership. But we also know that the region is growing quite quickly. And so as the region grows, so must transit service to service some of those density pockets that we have throughout our community and that are planning in the fringes of our community. And so we really wanted to look at how the system should grow and how we could pay for that and how the governance of MapBus could be altered in order to make some of those realities come true. So as I said, once the 2020 census is released, we are looking at this area becoming a TMA, and after that TMA status, the changes in 5307 stick and the 5339 formula grants will likely change as well, which will restrict some of the flexibility of MapBus to use the funding, the federal funding sources that it receives. But we also realized that there were some interagency issues that were needed to overcome, some communication amongst the partner agencies, and some of the duplication in staff efforts and just some of the management of the system itself. We really looked at the decision-making process here and how decisions are made, and what the equity in those decisions are, especially with funding and the representation and just the process in general, that how decisions are made. And so this study took a two-tiered track and looked at governance structures and funding. And there are some areas, that Venn diagram, that those overlap. So our recommended governance alternatives, we came up with 2 or 3. There's a long-term recommendation, which is to create a transit authority just on the North Dakota side. As I said before, or indicated before, the Minnesota side isn't as impacted by funding as the North Dakota side, and that's mainly due to state participation. Most of the transit service is located, as most of the population is located in the North Dakota side of the river. And so looking forward to creating that new governance model and that new ability to levy taxes to fund that gap. And MapBus is something that we looked at very closely and really wanted to move forward with as the recommendations of this plan. As you can see, the geographic coverage would be Fargo and West Fargo, with of course the potential to grow to maybe in Horace as their density and some of those riders are located there. But also we don't want to leave Moorhead and Dilworth behind. They would also be members of this transit authority, but would likely just purchase transportation services through the authority and then receive representation on the board through this. And then the long-term kind of vision is maybe creating a bi-state authority, but we know this is very challenging, especially this would take enabling legislation from the North Dakota side at first, and then also from the Minnesota side, as well as setting up many agreements between all of the jurisdictions that are represented here, which could expand to include West Fargo and Dilworth as they do purchase transportation services from MapBus currently. And so, like I said, that new governing body would be governed by a transit authority board and staffed by a single transit director, which would basically bring the two entities together under a single lead. We didn't necessarily determine some of the individual outcomes. There are a lot, like I said before, there are a lot of things that are going to have to be worked out in order to move towards this goal between the city of Fargo and the city of Moorhead and possibly the other jurisdictions as well. This is just some of the scope of a transit authority. I won't go through this for the sake of time. But really I wanted to get into the interim recommendation here, which is what we're kind of calling MetroCog oversight. And really this is the creation of a new position under MetroCog that would be a transit liaison or transit coordinator, and this person would be mainly responsible for implementing this plan. We know it's going to be a full-time job, negotiating between the jurisdictions, talking to the legislature, and just coming up with all of the things that need to be addressed in order to move this vision forward. And so we thought that having a position at MetroCog that would just deal with transit would be kind of an interim approach that could get some of this work done in an expedited manner, especially since we're looking at this funding gap taking hold in federal fiscal year 2023. So that's a very short time frame. And so, like I said, it's not necessarily a director position. It's more of a coordination position that would work directly with this body, the City Council in Moorhead, the City of West Fargo Commission, the City Council in Dilworth, and looking at how we can provide transit service on a regional level and not necessarily just within each jurisdiction. As you know, MetroCog's kind of mandate is to look at regional issues, but also have representation from the local jurisdictions to make sure that we're addressing individual needs of those communities. And so this is the same approach here. As I promised, I'd get into some of those financial assumptions. The cumulative impact of MetroCog and this region becoming a TMA is that MapBus will approximately lose about $1.2 million in operating funding, and that's based upon 2019 levels. That's including federal funding and the match that would be required for federal funding. But as we grow, we know that that will expand. So there are transit services, for instance, going out to West Fargo that we know that are going to be needed, additional service just within our core areas, additional frequency in headways. And so as we move forward, that will slowly go up and up and up. And so we just wanted to make sure that we get that right. We did estimate that based upon a plan that MetroCog did in 2018 for MapBus, and that kind of looked at a 20-year horizon for transit operations. Currently, they do a document which is called the Transit Development Plan, which we're currently in an update cycle, but that only has a 5-year range. MetroCog, however, has more of a 20 to 25-year vision horizon, and so we kind of wanted to take that in that study and push that forward and see how transit operations could really change in a 20-year period. And so these are some of the numbers that that study kind of came up with, and how operations could expand, and then what the gap would be if those operations were to expand. So how does this link to governance? So a lot of fees that we did look at are things that can be done independent of a transit authority study. However, when we did evaluate those, most of those could not just solely pay for the gaps that we were looking at. Whereas if we were to form a new unit of government with an authority to levy some kind of tax, like a transit assessment district or regional property tax or a sales tax, there would be, those would be able to fill that hole in transit. However, we really took an approach where we braided multiple funding sources together. And so we wanted to make sure that we were not just passing the buck off to homeowners, but rather looking at all different kinds of taxing modes and braiding them together in order to fill that gap in the future. So this is just some of the things that we did look at. One of the main hurdles is that there are a lot of funding sources that are not currently available in the state of North Dakota. As we know, we've been working here in Fargo with on-street parking fees are not currently allowed under North Dakota state law. And so that may be a good thing or a bad thing, but just like making up other funding sources, we looked at the possibility of funding sources that were out there. And so likely a lot of the funding sources that would go a long ways to filling the gap in transportation funding are stuff that has to be enabled by the legislature. Therefore, this just goes back to our governance, the interim governance, and having a position that is solely pushing these things and studying these and looking to the future of transit service. So like I said before, our conclusions, no single financial alternative is perfect. You know, an authority with the ability to level tax obviously does the majority of the heavy lifting in order to address the funding needs for MAPBUS as a system. But, you know, we're really open for discussion on how things should be, not just the funding sources, but also the governance and how that should be put forward in our area for the betterment of transit service, I think, throughout our region. So, like I said, our implementation roadmap is for that person to really, in the next couple of years, look at all the implications of all of these things and to really come up with agreement between the jurisdictions on how it would like to move forward in addressing the issues that are involved. So I think with that, for the sake of time, I'll just jump down to questions.
Commissioners, any questions? Mr. Garrett.
Right now, we have control over the MAP system. You know, we own it, and then we kind of sub out our services to Moorhead and West Fargo and other places as we see fit. My concern is if we have an authority that's multi-jurisdictional, if we have West Fargo and Moorhead and Dilworth and all the other commissioners and folks that are part of that authority, we lose all that control. So then you're talking about, okay, well, what does that control mean? Well, it controls how many people paying taxes, right? So Moorhead might have a great idea about a way to improve their system, which might raise the taxes of someone in North Dakota, for example, which is highly concerning. Is that not how that would work?
Well, I just correct one thing, Commissioner. Currently, the city of Fargo operates transit service for the North Dakota side of the river, and
Correct.
Moorhead operates their side of the river, but still under that MAPBUS moniker, and that was the recommendation of that 1999 study. And so there are something in the order of 13 to 15 different operating agreements that the city of Fargo has with the city of Moorhead, and they're very wide-ranging. For instance, one of the things is that the city of Fargo has 100% control of the ground transportation center. They own that facility, and Moorhead pays to kind of lease. It's a complicated agreement.
Yep.
But the problem, I think, with some of all these agreements and how they operate is the city of Moorhead would like to move forward because they do have funding that they receive from the state, and the state has a goal of increasing operating hours on their side. But because there's this difference between North Dakota and Minnesota, they cannot initiate some of the things that they would like to. And we look at that kind of as how to, you know, there's a difference obviously between North Dakota and Minnesota, but how do we look at transit service as a region? And so we do realize that, yes, we do want bodies like this to have direct control over that, or, you know, an authority board wouldn't likely be elected officials just appointed to represent on that board, like it is in many of the other authorities throughout this region. So we don't necessarily want, you know, them to be autonomous. We just need those resources in order to look at both transit funding and governance structure more holistically.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to give a cautionary tale of when you have unelected people saying how much people pay in taxes, sometimes those taxes go up because there's no accountability. We're the ones taking the heat because we appointed Bob, and now Bob's trying to raise taxes. So, you know, transit's a very expensive ordeal, especially if you want to go regional with it. And the amount of taxes that you need through property taxes, sales taxes, or whatever bucket you want to look at is going to be substantial. So if we start raising the mills for people's property taxes, or if we do a quarter-cent sales tax, people are going to notice that.
Yeah, I'll agree that that's a very sensitive issue of how we raise funds. Currently, the city of Fargo does pay for out of their millage some transit service, and there is a large portion of currently of the operations that are paid for with federal funds. But we do realize that that's going to decrease about 25% in the future, and so it's just how do we maintain the transit service even as it is today, let alone having it grow into the future.
Yeah, and just for the other commissioners, I would be highly uncomfortable with appointing an authority for this because of that taxing ability.
Their taxing ability? Bill, you would have your own taxing authority?
If you have an authority, it's a legal term.
That was one of the long-term recommendations of the study is to create an authority, but that would have to be done through enabling legislation at the state legislature.
So right now, if we have this, you wouldn't have any taxing authority?
Correct, no.
Okay. Can I have a motion, please?
I so move.
Is there a second? As I understand it, we're going to study a variety of things. We aren't to the final solution, but this ideas of where you guys are
This
at.
was just to point us in a direction, and then we'll have to work over the course of years in order to kind of figure out the intricate details.
Commissioner Strand.
Thank you, Mayor and Michael and Julie and all of you folks who are part of this effort. Here, what occurs to me is, of course, we're going this direction. Our population is growing. This is inevitable. What I'm thinking in my head is status quo versus future technologies. And I'm hoping that maybe future technologies, smart transit, smart technologies coming down the road could help us reduce that funding gap that is coming. So here's what I'd like to suggest.
Sure.
As long as we're studying all these models, I'd like to put all of our transit geeks together and visualize what transit will look like 10 years and 20 years from now. And Commissioner Pepcorn and I have ridden electric vehicles. You know, when we go to conferences, this is all we hear about if you're in the transit seminars, and you are too. So I see all this, and I appreciate all this, but I would challenge all of our transit folks to also embark on a futuristic exploration of visualizing what it would look like here with these changing technologies that are out there.
Sure, you know, and Commissioner Strand, if you are interested, I know you are interested in transit, you've served the MAC Coordinating Board. We're going through our update cycle of the Transit Development Plan, and we're actually looking at doing stakeholder outreach right now. And that's, you know, maybe we can engage you in that process, because that's really where the rubber meets the road, and engaging those technologies and to how we deliver transit service. And I know MapBus has won many awards over the last couple of years in their implementation of transit technologies. And so they're definitely to be commended for those. And we are looking at things like Tap Ride, which was very successful in the NDSU campus, and now has been successful in the industrial park service. And so those are things that we're looking at too, of having more on-demand type services that are maybe a little bit cheaper to run than fixed route, but having it complement fixed route. So not necessarily fixed route is running through neighborhoods, but maybe more along arterials, which is really its designed to do. So there are a number of things, yeah, that we are looking at as transit service changes.
I'll just throw one more comment, Mayor, if I could, in there. I'd sure wish if I could have a magic wand and touch it, that you would also, as you re-envision the future technologies and delivery of services, keep it free. If at all possible, this notion, we have free ridership right now. To me, that's a community of the future. I don't know if we can afford it, but maybe we can figure out how to eke those savings out so we can do it affordably. I'll leave it at that.
No, yeah, absolutely.
Commissioner Preston.
That would also take some cars off the roads.
Yes. Roll call vote, please.
Strand?
Yes.
Preston?
Yes.
Garrick?
No.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Mahoney?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mike. Discussion of hourly parking rate options for local and mercantile parking ramps. Mark Williams to explain. And I see we have 3 options, so.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. As riveting as the transit study and the 76th Avenue corridor study is, I would say Bob Stein would say parking's more exciting. So that being said, bear with me on this. We have an opportunity here in a month. We're going to be opening the mercantile parking ramp, the second parking ramp in less than a decade that we've constructed. And with that, we don't have an hourly parking established for the mercantile parking ramp. On August 27th, a proposal was put in front of the Parking Commission at charging $1.50 an hour with an $8 cap. And that proposal came from a recommendation from the Interstate Parking and the fact that the Civic Center parking ramp also utilizes $1.50 an hour. Considerable discussion was taking place with the Parking Commission, and they started talking about the Roco parking ramp, which has the first 2 hours free, and then it breaks down periodically after that. The Parking Commission voted 3-2 to discontinue the free 2-hour parking and establish $1.50 an hour parking for Roco and Mercantile at the time the Mercantile ramp opens. Since the Parking Commission meeting, there's been a lot of comments from the community. I have received one person contacting me from the residential unit of the ROCO building. There was concerns about the discontinuing the free 2 hours. And that being said, we were able to sit down and put together maybe 3 options you might be interested in. One option would be follow the Parking Commission's recommendation and accept $1.50 an hour with an $8 cap on both Mercantile and ROCO. The second option would be $1.50 an hour with an $8 cap with Mercantile and leave ROCO the way it certainly is right now. And the third option would be apply the parking rates for hourly requirements of ROCO on Mercantile and ROCO. Kind of confusing. I am here to answer any questions.
What was the discussion? It was a 3-2 vote.
The discussion kind of went around as far as the wear and tear of it and just the overall business plan of the ROCO ramp as far as being able to finance the repairs and everything else on that. There was some discussion on all these ramps are free from 5 p.m. until 8 a.m. and on the weekends. So there was a little bit of confusion talking about when they're free, this would still continue to be free during those times on all our facilities. But there's a lot of wear and tear based on people coming and going. And then a little bit of discussion took place as far as trying to make them all consistent amongst the 3 different ramps.
Yeah, and I think they should be consistent. They're very short distance away from each other. When you think about it, and if you have different funding source or funding methods, it's confusing to people. We lose a lot of money on parking ramps, a lot of money. So the 2 hour free, I'm sure people love it, but that little bit of extra income could mean something for us. Hundreds of thousands of dollars a year we lose on these, each single one of them, by the way. So I guess it'd be my indication that I would just do a flat 150 for the hours, up to a certain amount per day, and then keep it free during those times. It's already free. Just so that's the simplest approach for me, and I think that we could use the revenue because they do lose a lot of money.
Commissioner Pepcorn.
So, Mr. Chair, I agree that could eventually go that way, but I think for now we should leave it with the 2 hour free. I believe we have a lot of challenges, like we were just talking about with businesses, with the current economic situation, and so I think we want to do all we can to encourage people to use those ramps at this time, and then maybe down the road institute some type of increase. But to me for now, and that was kind of the discussion, there was people using it for 2 hours and kind of abusing it a little bit, but I think under the current situation I would support having them all be the same, having the 2 hour free for now, revisiting it later when hopefully our economy is doing better and things are different. That's my 2 cents.
Mark, did anybody consider 1 hour free? If you're trying to entice people to come downtown during the day hours, basically, an hour you can get your little errands done easily enough. If you're going to have lunch or something, you might be there 2 hours. But did anybody consider just first hour free and then pay?
That discussion didn't take place based on the presentation. It wasn't discussed. I mean, it's certainly something we could certainly look at.
Well, the other study is, did the parking service do an estimate of how many people went in and out? Wouldn't we have the data of how many people take the 2 hour free daily?
I do have that information.
How many is it?
Well, it kind of changed from last year to this year based on COVID, but let's just say March of 2019, 9,000 people, transient parkers, went in. 6,600 did not pay. So I have it broken down by months. I could certainly get you that information.
And then what happened in 20?
Well, January of 20, we had 11,000 people, transient parkers, come in the ramp, and then 9,400 did not pay. February, 14,000 parkers, 12,000 were under the free.
And so now we get to June, July. What are we doing?
March we had 8,000. 8,700 that came into the ramp as a transient parker, 7,500. Now, so, you know, these are going to include the night and the weekends. It's every time that gate goes up and down, it's just calculating how many people took a ticket and then calculating how many people didn't pay. And this is based on reports that the interstate parking provided us.
So the daytime where you're actually charging the fee would be a different breakout, right? You could have 11,000 for that month, but the reality during the daytime, you could have 5,000.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
It doesn't, I think the weekends and nights are in this number. And also, you know, when you look at January and February, I think a lot of contractors might have been coming and going, finishing up the Dillard building, maybe.
Mr. Preston.
Mark, is there any indication of those that are taking advantage of the 2-hour free parking are residents versus customers?
Based on the system that we have that monitors that, it's extremely difficult to be able to sort through all that. Sure. There is a license plate recognition reader there, but the one complaint I did receive was from a resident that prefers to pull his car in and out every 2 hours.
Bishop Pepper.
So, Mr. Chair, there is a concern with that. There people are reparking and all that kind of stuff. Once again, I'll just go back to the suggestion. For the short term, let's do the 2-hour, if nothing else, to promote. I mean, people are struggling downtown, and just to promote it, and then we can change it. That would be my suggestion.
Is that your motion then?
I'll make the motion. That would be the third option. You can stand me correct if that's correct. I think it's the third motion, but I would make that, and I would be happy to revisit it in the future when our economy turns around, which hopefully is very soon.
Do you want to put a date, 3 months, 6 months?
Well, if you want me to, I can tie it to your emergency declaration. I kind of like that idea. So let's when that expires, then we'll revisit the parking, if that's all right with everyone.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Mr. Garrick?
So about the funding, your garages get funding from the TIF district, they get user fees, and where else does the money come from?
Yes.
And what other sort? There has to be other
well, we have monthly contract parkers.
Okay. And that covers your expenses?
I would say not after bonding for to construct the mercantile.
Right. So I guess we're paying for bonds too. So I don't know how we pay for the bonds, but I'm assuming it's a mix of sales taxes and other taxes. Point being is someone's paying for it, right? We're not getting enough money into these things. So someone's paying for it, and whether it's the whole community or whether it's the people who actually use it, I would prefer to be the people that use it, considering this is it's for downtown. It's not, you know, infrastructure for someone in South Fargo, you know what I mean? So I respect what you're saying, and I'm not totally against it, but I would much rather it be a user fee than anything else.
Commissioner Strand.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner Pepcorn, I'm on pretty much the same page as you for a few reasons. One of them is we lost space downtown to park when these ramps were built, so there were trade-offs. Another issue is we have 90 minutes of free parking downtown, and we don't want to discourage people from coming downtown, especially today. But I have a question. We all know what we see in front of us, what was presented to us and to the public for ROCO. And what was presented to us, what the City Commission bought into, was the program that's in place now where 0 to 2 hours are free, 2 to 4 hours are $3, and 4 to $6 are $5, and a daily limit of $8. So that's what we were told would be the case. Could you remind me what we were told would be the case for mercantile?
I don't believe that there was any discussion on mercantile as far as what the hourly parking would be. One of the reasons that ROCO is the way it is based on a tour that was taken down in Nebraska, and they provided 1 free hour parking for their downtown facilities and then charged after that. And at the time, there was kind of the sentiment that some of these parking structures weren't the nicest, cleanest, so we wanted to get the residents and the citizens of the city to get used to parking, so it was kind of a way to encourage them to utilize the ramp and learn how it works and see the elevators and make it nice and clean.
Mr. Strand.
One final point I'll make is we're going to hear from Ben Dow shortly about the challenges of removing snow on our streets. And going into winter, it doesn't behoove, it's not a good idea to force more cars out into the streets to be ticketed and towed when we have set up a program and we created these ramps with this intention to do that.
Mr. Preston.
Oops, Sorry about that. So, Mark, the other city-owned parking ramps, the one at the Radisson is owned by the city?
Correct.
What are there any free hours there?
No, that's $1.50 starting at 3 a.m. until.
So I would make the argument for option 2, because I think it's difficult. Once you put this benefit in place, it's really tough to pull it back. And I think that's what you're seeing with the concerns that were expressed. I understand fully we are in the middle of this economic downturn. So, continuing with ROCO, I think would be fine, but to add another parking ramp to this, having this benefit, I think makes it more difficult long run to pull it back.
Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Voting on option 3.
Yes.
Pipcorn?
Aye.
Gehrig?
No.
Preston?
No.
Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. Next item, applications for property tax exemptions. Do I have a motion?
I so move.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Pipcorn?
Aye.
Preston?
Aye.
Gehrig?
Yes.
Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. Commissioner Strand would like to discuss recently approved snow emergency declaration ordinance goes effect 11/1/20. Ben Dow to explain.
Now we're getting to the exciting stuff. We saved the best for last, I know. You may have seen this slide before. It was part of my brown bag presentation in January. In December, I brought it in front of the commission here to ask for permission to move forward with the creation of the snow emergency ordinance. And so what you've had on your commission agenda for the last 2 commission meetings was the authority to put this in place by ordinance. This is why we're here. This is the problem we're having in Fargo currently when it comes time to winter. Some of this falls under our night parking restrictions and the enforcement and the change in the city that our officers are so busy in the evening that they aren't able to get out there and ticket. So we're looking for a solution to take care of that. But on the other side of things, we're also dealing with a lot of landlords that are maybe not including that there's only 2 parking spots included when you rent this place, and maybe don't count on the street to be 100% of your parking. So this is this slide that was in front of you at our brown bag in January. A little bit of how it works: emergency declaration by the mayor when a snow accumulation over 4 inches or more. And then I have a little more in the presentation to talk about it. All vehicles need to be removed from the street till the street is plowed. At that point, we discussed heavily about a $150 fine, or the very unpopular graduated fine structure that I brought up. So both those went away. We dropped it to a $100 fine. That worked in our fine structure. When I met with Nancy Morris, it slid right in there. It was really a good fit. So here's what came up as part of a conversation with Commissioner Strand. What was there before? And so as we dug into it, it was very confusing what was there, because I went ahead and underlined some of the stuff. Some of it was already in place, but it said the U.S. Weather Bureau. Well, that doesn't exist anymore. It's the National Weather Service. It expanded and said parking on may be prohibited or restricted, but then later it talked about snow emergency routes. So it was very unclear. So, and then the second part of it is when it's effect, we didn't really change any of that. What we did do, first off, we went and pulled our snow emergency routes out of everything. You guys, I brought that forward with a resolution for the commission to sign off on the snow emergency route resolution, and that is what goes into effect as of November 1st, is the snow emergency routes, no parking on the city's snow emergency routes such as University, 25th Street. Pretty much they're all no parking anyway, but we thought we'd better back it up with our ordinance and have it in place. The next is our snow emergency that the mayor can declare when we receive 4 inches of snow or more, and that is through the National Weather Service when it's proposed. Again, we put it on the shoulders of the mayor, the elected official, to make that decision. And in some of the conversations I've had with some of the residents, a lot of 4-inch snow events, we wouldn't have to do this. This really falls into, such as the December snow event we had last year when we got 12 inches. and the city was a pure shutdown. And so we're looking at those events. A lot of this stuff doesn't fall into that category. When I talked to John Wheeler, he was, you know, in reality we only see maybe 3 to 4-inch snow events or more per year. We laid it out there, you know, remain in effect until terminated by the mayor or until such time that the roadway is plowed curb to curb. Questions? I'll keep moving. Who have we worked with? Who have we spent time visiting with? NDSU was the big one. You know, that was the big one, and I worked with their operations director up there so that when we think this might be happening, the discussion will start 3-4 days before an event rolls in. At that time, they have a listserv for all their students out there for their emails. And so then we could start putting some of this message out. This might be coming, and then their operations director also said they have some lots that maybe aren't as close as most students would like. They might have to walk a little farther, but they'll open them up for free during the snow emergency. So the students would have a place to put their vehicles rather than leaving them on the streets. We also talked with Rob Sobolik up at the Fargo Dome. That would be also a potential opportunity if he didn't have anything scheduled, that we could, while the declaration is in place, that we could use some of that lot as well. Sanford North, a big employer up in the North Fargo area where this might affect us. One of the major places I spent a lot of time talking with Jason Nelson in charge of their facilities. He said that they can fully account for all their parking in their ramps and get all their employees off street when emergency is declared. So that was one that we thought it necessary to spend some significant time with. And then the Fargo Park District is one that they also have some lots located around town that they, of course, will want to get in and clear themselves, but during a snow emergency, when we have these, what I call blizzards, extreme events, 4 inches or more, that opportunity exists as well. How are we going to enforce this? So right now, PD is set up into 13 enforcement zones across the city. We do know that we won't be able to enforce because of the time it's going to take to get everybody on board with this, that we won't be able to enforce all 13. This is a component that we're going to have to work with our police department and our new chief to gear up 3-4 days before an event comes in, and he can start moving schedules around so that we can have the staff to enforce 3 or 4 zones at a time and really work our way through the city in different ways. Enforcement will not be conducted while it's snowing. That's the biggest thing. This is kind of something we're trying to work with our property owners to get the cars off the street. If it turns out that you can tell when we've had 4 inches of snow or more and we've plowed around cars, you can tell the ones that were parked on the streets. Those are the folks that are going to get the tickets after the event, and enforcement will typically just follow our snowplows as they plow the residential neighborhoods. And then here's the big kick. We got this new Cascade Clay alerts. We need people to sign up on this because this is going to be one way people can receive text messages of what's going on with our plowing crews, with if there's going to be a snow emergency. This is our big trigger, because if we can get as many people registered that this is possible, it'll be just an easy push. They'll get a text message, snow emergency going to be declared at this time by the mayor, and then it'll go in place. We're also planning to use this system in our downtown snow hauling this winter as well. So we want to get as many people registered with Cascade alerts as possible.
Good job. Questions? Mr. Strand.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Ben. And the community knows this policy has been evolving for a long time, and it's had a lot of input. I have a couple questions, and then I might have a comment. You've addressed where people around the campuses can park. Where can people downtown go park if they need to get their car off the street?
So this is one thing that it's not going to affect the central business district, because we haul that and we have that all set up with the parking and how it goes. So it does not, when we put this in effect, it does not, we will call out that the central business district is not affected by this.
What do you mean by the central business district? How far out is that?
So that goes from University to the river, from 7th Avenue North to 2nd Avenue South.
So they won't be affected by this?
No.
That's really important information to know. I didn't know that clearly. Yep. So they can still park there?
Yep.
John, you can still park.
Well, it's not, not so much me. That I think is a big concern, and I'll just have, I was intending to pull this off the consent agenda last meeting, but I overlooked it and wanted to have the public get this knowledge. And I know the media and the forum have reported it, but it's really important that we share that with the public as much as we can, this change coming our way. Okay, then to my fellow commissioners, I have one more comment, just a notation. Don't ever be thinking that we do not ever implement mandates. And don't ever be thinking that we don't implement new ordinances and policies that involve police and involve ticketing and involve citations. We do it all the time. So I'm going to remind us when we do mandates that we do it because there's some discussion that people just don't like mandates and we don't do it. And that we don't want to involve the cops and we don't want to be ticketing people. So part of my message is a reminder to us that we do this. And we do it for the right reasons.
Thank you. Thank you, Ben. Good report. Any other questions? Hope we don't get snow for a while, but thank you very much. 47, appointments to the Historic Preservation Commission. You have the recommendations.
Move to approve.
Second.
Second. Moved and approved. Any comments? Roll call vote, please.
Preston?
Yes.
Gehrig? Pepcorn?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. Thank you for your patience tonight. It was a long meeting. Thank you that came as well. We're going to try to get public comment as quick as we can, but we better bend the curve. So move to adjourn.
So move.
Second. Second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Yes.
We're out of here. Thank you.